I'm Alexander. Today's build log will be adding Hessian Tape Camouflage to the 15mm Cromwell tanks from the previous videos. Without further ado, let's get into the video. As mentioned, I have previously built and added stowage to these 15mm Cromwell tanks from the Plastic Soldier Company and Value Gear. If you are interested in learning more about the previous work completed, follow the link at the top right corner to check out these earlier videos. Inspiration for adding Hessian Tape Camouflage came from reading modeling magazines and with the products from Black Dog serving as the primary reference. Due to the small scale of these tanks, I figured that the best course of action was to simplify the process and focus more on the artistic visual rather than strive for super accurate and thin application. To create this effect, I use standard milliput as I find it much easier to form than alternative two-part putties. I use talcum powder to prevent the putty sticking to the glass plate, hobby knife, toothpicks, and my fingers. After thoroughly mixing up the putty, I used a toothpick like a rolling pin to create nice thin sheets to work with. Using the hobby knife, I then cut little strips for application over the model individually. The exact size of these strips varied to increase the randomness of the application. Over time, I found that cutting all the strips before moving on to application was both much faster and much more enjoyable. I broke the work down by individual panels to ensure that none of the putty was still soft and damaged while handling. This also allowed me to complete the work in a few sessions spread over 2 months. Also, the most important thing to consider when determining what to cover is how the tanks and crews operated. Areas with moving parts, hatches, and viewports should be free of the camo netting to ensure full combat readiness and historical plausibility. One challenge I experienced was difficulty getting the pieces of milliput to stick to the smooth surface. To overcome this, I found that working out from a corner detail in a shingling-like fashion seemed to work. Alternatively, for larger empty panels, I would roll an even thinner layer of milliput soaked in water to the part for future pieces of tape to stick to. For areas where the tape camo would be hanging over the edge, like on the hull above the lower glacis plate, I found that leaving the pieces of tape flat and then returning later in approximately 20 minutes to bend them over the edge worked better. Otherwise, I felt like I just kept pulling them off and having to reattach them to the tank with each new piece. The hardest portion of the tank to complete was the gun barrel. Again, I had challenges getting the milliput to stick. Eventually, I ended up creating a sheet with all the tape pieces still connected and attached to it on one side. After one half hardened, I added the second half and let it harden as well. In hindsight, this process would have likely yielded even quicker results on the other more simple portions of the tank, and would be worth considering in the future. Finally, I went over with individual pieces to hide the seam line between those two pieces that I had added to the gun barrel. That concludes the build. Here is the finished result. Overall, this was the portion of the build that I was most excited for with these Cromwell tanks, and I'm very happy with the result. Although this did take some significant time to complete, I'm very proud of the result and will most certainly consider doing this again in future builds. Currently, I'm working on designing some 3D printed accessories and buildings to make some small vignettes to display these handful of Cromwells that I have made. Stay tuned for this video. Thank you for watching. See you soon.